5.2, preparing for homeownership. Let's review how to calculate a front-end ratio and what must be included. The front-end ratio must include all of the items you see listed here: the principal, the interest, the property taxes, and the homeowner's insurance. The front-end ratio may also include homeowner expenses, as you see in this slide. So remember, front-end includes principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, as well as any homeowner association dues that apply. The back-end ratio includes not only all of the housing expenses, but also any debt such as car loans, student loans, credit cards, or other monthly debt obligations. Let's look at a couple client examples. This client has a monthly income of $3,422. The debt payments total $200. Now, the missing piece here is the mortgage payment. So if the housing ratio is 38% and the total debt to income is 44%, what do you think the house payment would be? So let's look at some other questions related to this scenario. When we think about the previous example, these are the questions we have to consider. What's the maximum house payment that these ratios allow? What's the maximum total house and debt payment, remember the back-end ratio, that these ratios allow? What's the maximum principal, interest, tax, and insurance payment that this client qualifies for given their current debt? Further, assume that the taxes and insurance total $275 a month. So what's the maximum principal and interest payment that this client would qualify for? Now let's move on to a discussion about timing, or timing on a mortgage purchase, and what it means to be ready to buy a mortgage. Short term is defined as mortgage ready within 90 days. So this client has savings, a good credit score, stable employment, and no issues relating to affordability. Midterm would be mortgage ready after 90 days, but within 180 days. So this could be a client that, maybe they have a small debt or two to pay off. Perhaps they have some savings, but not enough. They may have minor credit report issues that could be corrected right away. Or maybe they're just a few months short of a 2-year employment history. When we identify someone as long-term, this means that they won't be mortgage ready for at least 180 days. So this client could have excessive debt issues, or perhaps they have a lot of collections on their credit report and it's going to take them a long time to pay it off. They could possibly have no savings, or they could lack a stable job situation at that time. Now, when we're working with housing clients, HUD requires that each client be provided with a one-on-one client-specific action plan. This action plan is basically a to-do list for the client. It's a roadmap for them to follow in order to meet their housing goals. HUD also sets forth specific guidelines we have to follow, specific guidelines that we have to follow regarding follow-up with the clients. Follow-up should be attempted within 60 days. The counselor should make reasonable efforts to reach the client. If this is not successful, another attempt should be made, and if the client is still unreachable, at that point it's appropriate to send a letter or an email. If they continue to be non-responsive, at that point it's appropriate to terminate counseling. Now, the question has been asked many times: who has to do the follow-up? Can a counseling agency contract with a third party to conduct follow-up on counseling sessions? Typically, this would involve having a third party send out a letter. Well, the answer is that while this is permissible, it really does not meet HUD requirements for counseling session follow-up. Another question that comes up is whether or not a housing counselor can originate loans and provide housing counseling services. Well, the answer is complicated. Yes, they could, but disclosures are required, and the counselor must follow very specific guidelines. The counselor also cannot get a commission or a fee for originating the loan. So basically, originating the loan must just be a regular part of their job. What about referring a client to a particular lender for a specific loan product? Can a housing counselor refer a client to a particular lender for a particular loan product? Well, the answer is yes, it is allowable with some conditions. Again, the counselor or even a family member or anyone else in the agency must not get a fee, a commission, or any compensation. And the counselor must review at least 3 relevant loan products. So again, disclosures would be required. What about this scenario? What about a counseling agency that not only provides housing counseling services, but also sells property? Can a housing counseling agency do both? Can they sell properties and provide housing counseling services? Is that allowed? Yes. Again, disclosures will be required, and definitely guidelines must be followed. The client must be advised that they're under no obligation to use either service from the agency or that they can seek services from another provider. No extra compensation can be provided to the counselor. So again, it must just be a part of their day-to-day job. Now this next question does come up a lot. Is it okay to have a lender sponsor one of your classes? Can a counseling agency take part in a promotional agreement with a particular lender to promote educational classes? Tread carefully. You can easily get into trouble if you don't follow specific guidelines, and it's always best to have a written agreement. Even if a particular loan option is presented, you must also present at least 3 alternative choices. Clients must be informed that they are not obligated to use any of the specific products presented. Again, disclosures are a must. The agency can receive compensation, but not any particular employee. I would also add that if you plan to have the sponsor participate in any of your education sessions, you should make sure that they are providing educational content only and not marketing their company. This concludes our discussion on Unit 5.2, Preparing for Homeownership.